Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome again to another session of my adventures in role-playing. Today's topic is going to be on the various campaign settings and my experience with them that were published by TSR and Wizards of the Coast over the several editions of Dungeons and Dragons. So, being a person who follows sort of structure, I will start with first edition. So, of course, first edition D&D, the most likely campaign setting that you're going to run into is Greyhawk. The Greyhawk setting was the world that was essentially created by Gary Gygax and populated by his various co-conspirators, for lack of a better phrase. All of the major campaigns and modules that occurred in first edition have an actual location in the actual Greyhawk world map. There actually is, like, White Plume Mountain. There is an actual spot for that. There's the village of Hamlet. There's all the various places, the Barrier Peaks. So all the various places that exist in Greyhawk. And so Greyhawk was the primary campaign world in which first edition D&D occurred. I didn't, as I said before, I haven't played a lot of the campaigns in first edition other than those that I've been GMing. So I'm not overly familiar with Greyhawk, but I find Greyhawk to be fascinating because it's kind of almost a dark world in some ways, and it's a wilderness. It's a wild west. It's got pockets of civilization, but it's got lots of interesting stuff. You've got Euz, the sort of demigod who runs the north, and you've got Pamarge, which is a whole region which is run by the orcs, and you've got Scarlet Brotherhood in the south that are manipulators and sort of neo-Nazis. So it's a very, very robust world, and I like it, and I'd like to get more and more into it. The unfortunate part was, other than first edition stuff, once Gary was ousted from TSR, they didn't do much more with Greyhawk. There was an attempt in third edition to bring it back. A lot of the gods still exist from the Greyhawk world, but it's never been given the full due that it probably deserves as far as published material that way. There's probably lots of people who are creating worlds and filling up the world that are more unofficial. The other campaign world that kind of exists, it started in basic edition and kind of worked its way into first/second edition, and that's Mystara. So Mystara is the world in which the Isle of Dread is kept, or the Keep on the Borderlands. Anything that basically was in the basic sets, so basic, master, champion, immortal, whatever, those various box sets. So all the modules that were built in those worlds take place in Mystara. And other than just the couple of modules that I would have played, like Castle Amber is in Mystara. Other than that, I haven't really had a lot of experience or interaction with Mystara. I know of it, but I didn't do much with it. Then we have Dragonlance, and of course Dragonlance is a big player in the D&D world. I played the first module and was not a fan of it, simply because it felt a little too railroady. It felt very much like it told you where you had to go and what you had to do. The maps for it were astounding, because they were the first time we saw maps that were done in a 3D style, and the story itself is great. Like, obviously I've read the books, and I like the campaign world. I played the computer game as well, but I haven't played much in the actual campaign world. I do have the third edition revision of the Dragonlance story. So the Dragons of Autumn, Twilight, Winter, Night, Spring, Dawning. And one day I will play those. But other than that, Dragonlance was something that I was aware of, but I never got fully into. Oriental Adventures wasn't really a campaign world, but it did have modules in first edition that were supporting it, and it had its first edition rulebook, the Oriental Adventures rulebook. I like the style. I like the Asian world. I like that. We played a couple of those campaign modules with one of my old D&D groups. I had a Kensai by the name of Takeo Tara, nicknamed Yo-Yo, because in one battle he went up and down 7 times. It was like, got knocked down, got healed, got knocked down, got healed, got knocked down, got healed. It was, so he got nicknamed Yo-Yo. It's been a running joke for 25 years. So other than that, I don't remember there being much in the way of other first edition campaigns, if campaign worlds that were TSR based. I could be wrong, but that's my understanding. Going to second edition, there was a lot of campaign worlds in the second edition world. Very many that I never touched at all, and a few that I really, really fell in love with. So Al-Qadim was the second edition campaign world. It was kind of in Forgotten Realms, kind of not in Forgotten Realms, but it was the world based around the Arabian Nights. So it's where you would have Sinbad and all the Arabian heroes and stories like that. So it had a very Middle Eastern feel and Middle Eastern quality. So genies and Afridis and desert and stuff like that. So again, I was aware of it, but it was nobody that I was aware of really wanted to get into the campaign and play it, and I didn't have a lot of materials for it. So it was something that again I was aware of, but I never followed. Birthright, I barely knew existed. I saw the logo for it many, many times, but never realized what it was. Now I understand it's basically a generational campaign series where you don't play at the level of a single character per se. You do play as a single character, but you also play with a generational concept. So you're playing on a nation level, or on a literally a family or house level. So it sounds interesting, but again, never got into it. Didn't know anybody who was into it. I know it has a strong following, just nobody I knew. Council of Worms, I didn't even know was a campaign setting. It literally was, from what I understand, the first campaign where you could play as a dragon or dragonkin. It only had a single box set. I knew it existed, but again, I had no interest, and nobody I knew was really into it. So really, it was something that completely slipped my mind. Lankmar, which was TSR's attempt to take the world of Fafard and the Grey Mouser and work on it. So there was the main campaign setting, which I think came in a box set, and then there was a couple of modules that went along with it. I've not yet read Fafard and the Grey Mouser. I own the series. It's on my to-do list, but so I don't really know how much it would or wouldn't be something I'd be interested in. But again, it's nobody got me into it. It was just something I was aware of. In second edition, they took Mystara and they added the Hollow World. So basically a world inside Mystara. So on the it's like a Dyson sphere. It's on the inside. Again, that's all I know. I know nothing more than that. I just know it existed. I saw the logo for it for years, but never went down that rabbit hole or understood it. Planescape. I came to Planescape a little too late. I didn't really know it existed until Torment, the game, came out, the PC game, and I'm kind of sorry that I missed out on the Planescape bus. It has a really neat sort of style to it. The artist probably has a huge thing to do with that, but it sounds intriguing with the whole factions and the city of Sigil, and all those various things. And yes, apparently it is pronounced Sigil, not Sigil. It should be Sigil, but apparently the person who originally started doing the campaigns under Monty Cook mispronounced it as Sigil, and it's stuck. So it's been, the proper name for it is the mispronunciation of Sigil. So yeah, I would have liked to have gotten into Planescape. I probably would still like to get into Planescape. It's just that it's not supported anymore, and who knows? Maybe I'll get into it. Maybe I won't. Spelljammer. The idea of interstellar travel on a fantasy concept is weird. It's like, what? So Spelljammer is literally the idea that you have ships that look like medieval or like 17th century boats that can fly using special magic between the spheres, and the spheres basically being the various worlds. So you could theoretically jump on a Spelljammer ship and go from Dragonlance to Forgotten Realms to Greyhawk to wherever. And it had its own, campaigns, and that it had novels even. I just didn't get into it because it tried to meld science fiction and fantasy in such a way that I wasn't comfortable or liking. So I backed off on that. I saw a lot of materials for it, but I never went anywhere with it. Dark Sun. I really liked the Dark Sun world, the gritty world of where magic is done the world harm. It's like a huge ecological disaster through magic, and you've got basically a desert world run by these despotic dragon kings, and there's psionics, and there's magic is limited, and there's weird concepts like mules, which are half dwarf, half human, and half giants, and lots of cool stuff. I've read the novels. I love the world. I played a couple of the campaign or a couple of the modules in the world. Really got into the style of it, and I really liked the stuff. There was an attempt to bring it back in 4th edition, and then they haven't done anything in 5th. They didn't do anything in 3rd either. So I'd like to see it maybe get used again, but unfortunately, again, it's not currently in a huge support method. Forgotten Realms, of course, is the big campaign setting for 2nd and every edition thereafter. My understanding is when Gary Gygax got ousted from TSR, they went looking for a new world in order to populate, and of course Ed Greenwood, sent them several boxes of material, which was just a scratch of what he had, and they jumped on it, and it became the world of the de facto world for. Thank you, dear. You can go away now. For 3rd edition D&D. So, 2nd edition and then 3rd edition. I never really played much in the campaigns or the modules in those worlds, but I've read a lot of the novels. I actually own every single Forgotten Realms novel that was ever published. It's kind of I actually own every Dark Sun novel that was ever published as well. So I really like reading the stories and learning the world that way. But it is a pretty daunting world that is very, very well fleshed out. So it's an interesting place. And then my favorite 2nd edition campaign is Ravenloft. I love the gothic horror in a D&D environment that Ravenloft brings. The original Ravenloft module by Hickman and Weiss was just fascinating. And then the fact that they made a campaign world out of it, and I gobbled up Ravenloft. I love that horror. I love the gothic. I love I own all the novels again. I really like the Ravenloft world, and it would be a world that I wish more people would be interested in, because most of my friends don't like horror as much as I do, and therefore I don't get to play it to the extent I would. But I really like that campaign world. Then we get to 3rd edition. The only realms the only campaign worlds that I'm aware of in 3rd edition, other than the continuing of Forgotten Realms, is there was Eberron, which was there was a contest that happened many years ago where they you had to put forth a 1-page sort of high level description of your world, and then if you got accepted, you went and you created like a much larger detailed description. Then if you got accepted, you got to be one of the people that would be one of the 3 people, I think, that would then do a full fleshed out world, and then they would pick one of those worlds to be the next campaign setting for D&D, and Eberron is the one that won. And Eberron I'm not a fan of, simply because it's too much steampunk. Lightning trains and the various things that are there, and it's just not my cup of tea. I again, back to the idea with Spelljammer mixing science fiction and fantasy. I'm not a big fan of steampunk as such. And I definitely don't like to play in worlds where there's, like, it's one of the things I don't like with what they did with Forgotten Realms when they came up with black powder. It's like, you don't need gunpowder. Let's not add an Arbicus to the world. So really, Eberron was not my key. There was a third-party campaign setting. I think D&D supported to a certain extent, called Calamar. And my only exposure to Calamar was the Dungeons and Dragons comic books that came out by the people who published Calamar. There was there was a 7-issue series having to do with a dragon, and then a follow-up, and then a couple of standalone series. And I read all those comics, and I thought they were great, and they were very good at representing 3rd edition D&D, but Calamar was something I never got into as Calamar, and it's since moved on to become the primary campaign for the Hackmaster, the game, that I'm not interested at all. And then the other campaign that I'm aware of from 3rd edition is Rogocon, which was Wizards of the Coast licensed the Legend of the Five Rings from whoever owned that license, and they took the Oriental Adventures book from 1st edition and they melded it with the Rogocon of the what was at one point a trading card game, and they created what I thought was a really, really neat campaign world. I really like Rogocon. I really like the idea of the clans. I like the structure. I've got, again, all the novels that were published from Wizards for it. I like the storytelling. I like the world. But again, there was no modules published for it, to my understanding. There was just the main rule book, maybe a couple of splat books, but I'm not too certain. So unfortunately, there wasn't enough material there for anyone such as myself to jump on or be interested with. So then we go to 4th edition, which I completely avoided, and the only thing I know about 4th edition was the points of light concept. So there wasn't really, it was a very different idea. They did come up with a Dark Sun campaign book, I remember, and they had Forgotten Realms was in the 4th edition. But again, I didn't play 4th edition. I didn't follow the 4th edition campaign, so meh, this wasn't my interest. And then now with 5th edition, they brought back Ravenloft, kinda. They haven't done any other campaign worlds, to my understanding, but they've recently brought forward Ravnica, which is the campaign world that has to do with Magic the Gathering, because this is their attempt to basically broaden the Magic the Gathering world. So take the people who play the card game to play the role-playing game, people who play the role-playing game to play the card game, because Wizards of the Coast owns both of them, so it does them a double dip. But as I haven't jumped into 5th edition fully, and I'm not at all interested in Magic the Gathering, and never was, found it to be back to that other concept of scope creep, and the fact that the cards that were published in the earlier editions have been banned for play, and that the later editions override the original editions, and it's all who can spend the most money to have the best deck. Not at all my interest, so I just completely avoided Magic the Gathering. So when they came out with the Ravnica, it's like, I could care less. It's like not my cup of tea. They are bringing out Eberron for 5th edition. It's just recently been announced, so that's going to continue. Forgotten Realms obviously is still there, but they don't have the novels anymore. There's only one series of books being published by R.A. Salvatore, and they're not even being published by Wizards of the Coast. They're being published by another publisher. So that's the state. So that's my understanding of all the various campaign worlds that have existed in the Wizards of the Coast TSR world, and my exposure to them. There are some that I really have a lot of fondness for, Greyhawk, Dark Sun, Ravenloft. Some that I kind of missed out on, Dragonlance and Planescape. Some that, and Rogocon is there as well, or Oriental Adventures. And then a large number that I know of, but I never followed up on, Al-Qadim, Birthright, stuff like that. So If you want to debate with me, if I missed any campaign worlds that maybe were out there that I wasn't aware of, or I've misrepresented them, or I've been too flowery on others, email me, ratnef, RATENEF, @gmail.com. Let me know where my errors are, and I'll talk to you soon. Thanks.